I don't know about you, but these days it feels like the world and our lives are moving at hyper speed. The all-new Nissan Murano is an unapologetic refuge amidst the hustle and bustle. In the Nissan Murano, you can take a beat, catch your breath, and re-energize. With its elevated modern interior and bold new exterior, this vehicle stands out. Its massaging leather-appointed seats melt away the tension of a busy day, adds to that feeling of refuge. Optional features like panoramic moonroof that adds tons of natural light to its roomy cabin, and ambient lighting sets the right vibe. So crucial in dreary winter days. The Bose premium sound system helps you escape further into your favorite music. The Nissan Murano and all its features gives you the greatest rush, while not feeling like you're rushing at all. Find your moment of calm in the all-new Nissan Murano. Drive the all-new 2025 Nissan Murano today. Features listed or available upgrades.
What if you could take your leadership to the next level, starting today? Whether you're looking for the next big idea or just a spark of inspiration, the Paper Napkin Wisdom newsletter is for you. Either way, you'll want to visit papernapkinwisdom.com and sign up now.
Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we share pearls of wisdom shared by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers. Here's your host, Govindh Jayaraman.
Hi, my name is Govindh Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode number 218. We sit down with a cybersecurity pioneer and entrepreneur, Eldon Sprickerhoff. Eldon's journey highlights crucial lessons. Success isn't just about having a great idea, it's about enduring, adapting, and positioning yourself for opportunities that arise over time. The reality of entrepreneurship, that it's a long game, one that requires resilience, risk management, and a commitment to building a strong episode. In this episode, Eldon breaks down how all of this is not random. It's the product of preparation meeting opportunity. He shares why fostering a committed culture and managing risks can be game changers for long-term success. Now, let's dive in. Grab a paper napkin, grab a pen, take some notes, and share your big takeaways with us using the hashtag #PaperNapkinWisdom. Let's listen in on my conversation with Eldon. Eldon Sprickerhoff, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm excited to have you here with me today.
Glad to be here.
And you shared with me an interesting napkin. It's actually a quote that I've used in a slightly different way before, so I'm really excited about talking about it. It's survive long enough to catch a lucky break. Why did you share that with me?
So I think if I look back at my own sort of startup journey, right? You start off with, unrealistic expectations and optimism, rose-colored glasses, whatever you want to call it, and expect that the world will just come fighting to your doorstep and money will be coming into the door so hard you can't close it. It's hard to close it at the end of the day. But then the reality sort of sets in and you recognize that it's not going to be all, Lambos and private planes, and you have to change your mindset to adjust to that, and that it's going to be dog eat dog. There's a lot of things that are coming at you. So, I think the one of the things that that I talk about when I'm talking to startups and founders is that it's great to be optimistic, sort of have, that sort of idea, mindset of abundance, but rationalize it. And you need to come up with the idea of being what I've called the chief survival officer, that is something that you need to focus on. And the survival of your startup every day should be your constant care. And so that's, and so what happens is survive long enough to get whatever that lucky break is. And, I don't think there's enough attention that's given to the role that luck plays, whether you met the right person or something happens, global macro that moves in your favor, whatever it is so surviving long enough to catch one of those lucky bursts, taking advantage of it, and then changing the inflection point, upscaling, and then rinse, repeat surviving long enough to catch that next lucky break that comes your way.
Yeah. First of all, there's a lot to unpack. And I think that one of the things that you started off with was that a lot of startups, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of creatives, a lot of everybody that does anything new comes into it with unrealistic expectations, with with this optimistic view of the value, or no, not even the value, because the value may be intrinsic, but I mean the value adoption rate and the value recognition rate of everybody else around, right? And it's almost like part of the deal, right? Isn't it? It's sort of like, it's part of the creative process. We have to believe that
Yeah.
it's better than it is, or more obvious than it is.
And if you didn't, you'd never start. Right. If
Right.
I think about sort of, so my wife and I had our first child 6 months before I started eCentire. And so there was a lot that was mapped onto that same journey, right? So, you think about what it's like to have a kid, and you think how wonderful it's going to be. And, preparing to have the child is pretty awesome. And then, the kid is born, and that's exciting. And then there's, diapers and 2 a.m., feedings and screaming, and it's not always the baby. And, and so it's like that makes it that's a tougher thing. And that's something that you love. And so, in very the same way, your startup is this thing that you love. It's your baby. And I said, you need to take this, like everything is out to kill your startup, or everybody's out to get you. Your chance of survival in a 5 or 10 year period is not great. So you need to take this, this hard, clear look at it with the calculated eyes of an outsider, and figure out what you need to do to make it survive and thrive, and not just, oh, this is my baby, I love it. Why can't everyone else see that way? And again, there's a lot to unpack there as well. But this sort of rolls up into, that sort of, the sooner you accept that it's going to be a struggle, it's meant to be a struggle. Let's dig in, do what you need to do to make it survive, with sort of, again, a rational perseverance to move it forward. And then dedicate all your time to it. I think there's a comment, like, you don't play house. It's not sort of a dress up game. It's do or die, and you need to adopt that process if you're going to succeed.
Yeah. And so you've got to go through this cycle almost, right? Where you're super optimistic, rose-colored glasses, otherwise you wouldn't do it. But then, and I like what you said, the calculated eyes of an outsider. But the influence here, and I've always talked about it, that as a founder, you have to be partially schizophrenic, right? You have to lead like a leader, but you have to own like an owner, and you have to sell like a client. But you're talking about it even differently, like a dispassionate outsider. What would you look at that organization like? That's yet another personality that we have to adopt. How do we do that?
So, one thing I've done in the past is say, again, very dispassionately, what could kill my company in 2 years? Right. And there's, you can go through the five forces, red ocean, all these different scenarios, but like, be really dispassionate about it. It says, what are the weakest parts of my company? What could kill it in 2 years? And that has a tendency to focus one on what really needs to be done to defend yourself, because everybody's coming at you. And I think there's more competition now. There's ease, like how much, entry into the market is so much easier than it was, say, 10 or 20 years ago. You need that very dispassionate, almost negative, what will kill my company, and then work backwards to whatever you can do to provide a bulwark against that happening.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, when you just snuck in Porter's Five Forces, which is a really very, very thorough strategic look at what could, what strategic landscape within an organization lives within. And they are industry bargaining power, like supplier bargaining power, consumer bargaining power, ability of customers to find substitutes, right? And missing one. Oh, threat of new entrants, of course.
Threat of new entry. Yeah.
Yeah. So these are the five forces, and that's what you're talking about. Very powerful construct to use. But it's also easy to sell yourself that you've got answers to everything.
Right. If maybe you do, but you probably don't. And I think the other thing is, so I came up without an MBA or really any business backing, so I didn't know about any of this at that time. So these are things that I've had to learn over the last 20 years and sort of apply that. If you're not with a dispassionate eye looking at who's your competition, who's coming up behind you, I look at sort of the other complement to Porter's forces are Brill's Rogue Waves. So he basically wrote this book called Rogue Waves that looks at what big companies that are well established, they can be swept over by rogue waves. And so it was really an instruction manual for large companies to avoid being taken over, like Xerox and so many others that we know of. But I liked it from a perspective of this is what big companies are afraid of. You can use this as a startup to-do guide to say, okay, I'm going to focus on these things that they're afraid of. I can be one of those waves as well. So I took a slightly different curve to that approach.
That's bright. That's really bright. I like that. Rogue Waves. So one of the things that you talked about, Eldon, which I think is I think a part of your napkin, though not explicit, is but you sort of hinted at this idea that you didn't have a business education, so you had to learn as you went. Isn't part of your napkin, part of what you're saying, stick around long enough, is learn around long enough too, right?
Absolutely. And I think, another thing I see when I'm talking to startups is they've built some tooling. They haven't figured out who their ideal client profile is. And so they're out trying to, your only tool is a hammer, every problem's a nail, and trying to fit that in. And it's invariably, it's painful. It's hard to do. So much of it, again, comes down to listening, to identifying who your client is and engaging them, talking to them, listening to them. When you've got some kind of tooling that's available, William Gibson said, the street finds its own use for things. So, you might have an idea how your end user is going to use your offering tool, software, hardware, agent, whatever, but they've probably figured out something that they'll use it for that you had not figured out yet. And that's how we were able to sort of expand from a contracting consulting company into a managed services company by listening to what the clients thought they could use our tooling for. And that sort of like survived long enough to get that perspective from our clients who are engaged, and then pivot just enough to catch that next wave and sort of upscale to the next level.
Yeah, and I think there's a really big difference between thinking you have the answer and knowing, right? Knowing what the client thinks, knowing how you're perceived. So you can think that you know, but until you know, you don't. And the only way to know is have that honest conversation.
Yep. And I said, to get buy-in by whatever, again, whatever that means. And so much of it is to not have an ego around what you think they need, but to really get commitment from them. And sometimes that just comes from, money, right? Nothing focuses people as well on committed as money, whether it's, as a design partner or paid POC or any of these things, right? Because, I've talked to a lot of founders where they're like, went out to the market, got a lot of ideas, and I'm building the tool. And I said, well, have your potential clients paid you for any of this? And like, well, no, I didn't ask. So, well, you don't know whether it's really a problem you're solving. Let's say it takes you 6 months or 8 months to figure out this tooling. You come back and you say, hey, you had this problem you told me about, and I've got this tool that does it. You don't know how much it's going to cost. Was it really a problem? They may have left. They may have already solved the problem. It may have never been a problem in the first place. It's like, this is how you need to get, it's not enough just to get the ideas. You need to get them to, yes, it's a problem. It's enough of a problem that I am willing to put my money and my reputation on the line to solve this problem. And I believe in you enough to put my reputation on the line. Without all of those things, we're sort of, the blind men with the elephant, right? Just getting a different aspect all the time. Like this, cash has a tendency to focus people on what they really need.
Yeah, and I think that's also the danger of the current. A lot of founders are acquiring clients who they think they're clients, but they're not getting them to pay for it, right? And maybe they think, oh, the data exchange will have some value on the back end, and I'm going to acquire my client for their data, not for their dollars. But there's a challenge in that, right? Because you still have to find a client for the data first.
Yeah. And if you're not explicit in this specific case as what you're doing, using the data for, there can be privacy pieces. You can have people who are pretty angry with you. I did not intend you to use that data for that purpose. My data was not intended to be resold. Even, if it's hidden there in the fine print, that's one great way to get people to turn against you. It's, monetization, always going to be tough. So, one of the things, you've got this idea, you've got this tooling. Can you actually ever make money on it? And if you can you make it fast enough before your runway runs out?
So when you talk about survival, survive long enough, right, to catch a lucky break.
Yep.
When you're talking about survival, you're talking about this sort of this shift in mindset from optimism, I can make it, which you have to keep in survival, right? You don't survive without hope, right? So you need to hold on to it, but you also need to, ration supplies to live long enough for the ship to come in.
Right. Hope is not a strategy, right? That's a well-worn chestnut, right?
Yeah.
But I see, I've seen things where they might get if you're lucky enough to get a sort of friends and family and maybe fools, early pre-seed, go out and splurge it on, some swag that doesn't make sense. Like, again, doesn't move the needle. Be very, they're not cost conscious, and that is not digging deep and surviving to go into survival mode, right? Like, that makes for a very difficult Thanksgiving if you've raised money from family and friends and say, okay, Zuck, where's my money, right?
Right.
And so part of that is being very wise with what you spend your money on, be able to justify, okay, this project I'm going to try to do, this is expected return on capital expenditure, and track it really carefully, right? So it's no splurging, very rational, cold decisions. Again, so you can keep extending that runway until you can find something that actually makes the change. Whether you meet somebody who desperately needs your product, or an investor, or someone who's going to come on as an early employee that believes in your vision. There's all these different things that can change the inflection of your company's arc.
Yeah. The other thing that I think is not an insignificant choice of word in your napkin is the idea of catching a break, right? Because there are breaks around us a lot, right? I mean, very often, if I look back and I'm honest about some of the businesses that scaled very quickly that I've had and the ones that didn't, there were breaks all around us that we didn't always catch. Like, we missed, and it was like, oh my God, we totally missed that opportunity. And they're there. Recognizing them is one thing, actually catching them is another, right?
Yeah. Especially if you've got your competitors that are also in the water, looking for that next wave to come in, and they catch it by some means, right? They catch it, you catch it, you get left behind, just sort of bobbing there, and that's very painful. So, the speed that you can recognize that opportunity and then execute quickly enough to set yourself aside from your competition, critical.
Yeah.
And you have to be always watching out for that and have the opportunity to, I guess, expend political capital to affect a change, to actually be able to take advantage of that wave that's coming to you.
So look, in strategy and startups, in your experience with a lot of, and I know that you've had some tech experience as well. So thinking about all of this background, you've obviously been in situations where there's a rising tide, right? AI is the current rising tide, and there's been, there've been very many other ones in the past, and a lot of people believe optimistically with their solution, hey, it's a rising tide. I just need to catch one tenth of 1/100th of 1%, and I will that will be all I need, right? But that's not how it works, right? That's
No.
If that's what you're aiming for, that's a tough way to win.
Yeah, that's the whatever the law of large numbers, or however you want to look at it, right? It's not just going to come and knock on your door, right? Especially when they've got this huge force, AI ML right now, and that everybody is going after that same wave simultaneously, and you've got to discover, how are you going to differentiate yourself from everybody else who's saying exactly the same thing. And so much of this comes down to, like prove to me outcomes, just don't prove the dream, right? What the tech is fine, but ultimately, what is the outcome from using this offering, whatever it is, whether it's services or something that's agentic or whatever. What is the outcome that makes it I need to get this right now? That encourages people, instead of, it's a nice idea. I don't know if you have legs. If it has legs, I don't know if you're the one to go with it, right?
Nobody's questioning AI's value today.
No doubt.
Right. But people are questioning, entity A or entity B's ability to execute against it.
Yeah. So, why you?
Deliver value.
Yeah. Right? Why you? Why should it be you? Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little bit from the perspective of what you're sharing. Catching a break, you can't go out there and ask for a break. You have to catch it. You have to earn it. You have to deserve it. You have to be lean enough to be able to survive long enough to receive it, but also robust enough to be able to execute against it. Right. So it's a lot of assessing that people have to do all the way through. Where do you see, in your experience, in your startup experience, where have you seen the place that for you allowed you to survive longer? Like, what was the thing that you did to really augment your survival chances?
Yeah. So much of it was getting out to where the clients were and talking to them, right? Not selling directly, but that sort of thought leadership pieces, being just far enough ahead to let them know what they needed and be able to offer them, a salve for their pain before they even knew that there was a pain there. And part of that was going to where your clients or your potential clients, where you think is your ICP, actually is. So if you can't get in front of them and establish yourself as an I hate the term expert, but thought leader, knowledgeable fountain of knowledge, you're never going to get anyone's attention. And it's something that I see again a lot with this sort of AI push for the last 2 years, especially. So you've got these startups that have some kind of AI offering, and they're going out to these other conferences, AI conferences, and they're meeting other startup founders, researchers, everything. They're they're not getting close to their clients at all. So it's great, they get to hobnob with other luminaries and talk about processes, but that doesn't move the needle from who's paying, who's closing deals, this kind of perspective. And that's, you really need to get to where they talk to the clients, where you meet them, whether it's, smaller events, especially places where, if your shields are up, you're less likely to be receptive to someone selling you a service, and you always need to be selling. So, it's not easy. I think it's simple, but it's not easy. That you've got to go to people where they are, and again, you have an idea of who your client base is, and you need to test that and get feedback from them. And if you're lucky, again, and you can establish yourself as a thought leader, someone, given enough opportunity, will become what I call a true believer. That can help. That's the lucky break, right? Somebody who's connected enough, recognizes there's a problem, believes that you're the one who can solve that problem, and is able to commit money, their network, they're putting their reputation on the line, they're burning their own personal capital to help move you ahead because they see something in you and they want to help move that ahead.
Yeah, and I think that's such a important point. It was recently, pointed out, for example, that in any thought leadership sphere, there's more noise than there ever has been before, right? And every day there's another one. There's another entry, whether it's podcasts or whatever, right? And sure, Paper Napkin's been around for 10 years, but if you're just searching for podcasts today, you don't necessarily know that. The thing that's different is survival. The thing that's different is your ability to add value over a long term. And if you're going to do that, the only way to do that is to, it's the old shoe leather approach. You got to work it. You got to work. You can't just, isn't there a danger in the startup world, in the incubator world, where people just sit in their incubators all warm and fuzzy, and everybody ruminates about how great their ideas are without actually unincubating them and getting them out in the world and breaking some eggs? And not all eggs survive, like in the world, right? They don't hatch.
Exactly. And I think that's part of the reason why they're trying to avoid the term incubator much more this time now, because honestly, as you said,
they're using accelerator now, right? They're saying, we're an accelerator.
Yeah. Because incubator, you couldn't survive outside of us. And, I have in my book, I talk about the odds of you surviving, any startup surviving, 10 years, let's say, the odds are better if you're playing inverse Russian roulette, right? Yeah. So you like a 16.66667% of survival, right? 1 in 6 empty chambers, as opposed to maybe the 10% survival rate, that whether it, and the numbers are all over the place, right? But again, the point I'm trying to make is the odds are not good. And it's nice to be cozy with a bunch of other people, and never go out and talk to clients. And you love this little piece of tech that you built, and you never leave the nest and face the harshness of the world where, like, honestly, nobody cares about you personally, right? You have to make that effort to and face the winds. And one of my jokes is so I live out in the country, and my wife has chickens, and part of my job is to protect the chickens against everything. And it's come to my as I'm defending this, everything likes to eat chicken. Okay. There's hawks. We had a coyote yesterday that came up to the fence. There's hawks, there's foxes, there's, weasels. Chicken likes to eat chicken, right? They will attack each other and eat each other. And in that same precarious method, everything is out to get your startup. Nobody owes you anything. And so it's
you can the ultimate game of chicken.
It truly, and again, everything anything could kill a chicken any day, including other chickens. So that's your competition. And so it's very easy to sort of to play house, as I think I've said before, and stay in your incubator, your sort of warm little, your warm little enclave, and think you're in the arena when you're just in the green room, the dressing room before the big show. And it's difficult it's so comfy in there, right?
Yeah.
And it's you can commiserate with other people, but it holds you back. You get susceptible to groupthink. You never test your ideas out in the real world.
And buffeting the storm, like waiting out the storm, doesn't mean hiding from it.
No. Like, you have to get out there, right? You have to get out there. And if you're, the green, so the blue ocean, red ocean scenario, right? So, it's, one of the Porter's five forces, pieces in business school that you talk about as well, where, blue ocean is when you have no competition and that it has its own problems. And then red ocean is there's so much competition. There's different approaches for each of those things. And I look at, cybersecurity has been my focus for the last 2+ decades. And so if you were selling cybersecurity defenses for AI models 4 years ago, super blue ocean, right? Super blue ocean. And you, like, I'm not really sure who you'd sell it to. You have to educate, you'd have to find clients that were actually building machine learning models, doing AI, and convince them that there were needs for security pieces like that. That were just not, and you had to survive long enough to find those clients, to educate those clients, to persuade them that this is something valuable, and get them to pay to support you. ChatGPT has been out for 2 years, so it sort of democratized LLMs and AI and springboarded forward. So now there are dozens of companies that are building security systems for AI ML models. So within the course of, basically 2 plus or minus 6 months, years, blue ocean to completely red ocean, and everybody fighting. And, if you were, just because you survived, you existed 4 years ago, doesn't mean that you're necessarily in a stronger position, because there's other people who got funded. They've got more employees. They've got more marketing dollars. They've got all of these go-to-market motion that you may or may not have. So, it's one thing to have an idea that's so far ahead that people don't understand it yet, but that has its own problems, right? You got to survive long enough.
People think that blue ocean's a great place to be, but I've been there. It's a scary place to be.
It's terrible.
You're alone. Like you're alone. There's no one around. That means no customers. You have to find customers and bring them to the middle of your blue ocean, and a lot of people are like, I don't want to go there. Because that's not their business, right? So
there's no analog. You can't easily describe what you do.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
It's a scary place. And then if you do get comfortable in the blue ocean, and then you look down, and it's like, oh, that's looking a little purple down there. That's not looking great. And then you see it coming, and this big red wave coming, right? Then it's a whole different market motion. What does it look like to survive if you've been in this mindset for so long, where you've been way ahead of the market, and then the market catches up to you?
So let's go to thought leadership just real quickly. Talked about offering a solution, or identifying a problem, or being the solve to a pain, which is I think really interesting and a very relatable thing. I mean, I think most people will understand what you're talking about. But isn't there a notion, and at least it's one that I like to say, is that you cannot identify the problem and pain and provide the solution in the same conversation? You're no longer as trustworthy. They have to be aware of the pain. They have to have already discovered that there's discomfort, and then you can provide the solution. You can suggest the solution might be otherwise than they thought. However, or the root cause of the pain may be deeper than they thought, but they have to be aware of the pain before you offer the solution. And I think that speaks to your shoe leather. You have to engage them in conversation long enough so that they discover the challenge and you can offer a solution from a position of credibility, right? But that doesn't happen in one meet. I think we all think, oh yeah, I'm just going to sit there and I've got this really, I'm not using PowerPoint now. I'm using something really better and insert tool name here and watch this, it's going to work. And it doesn't. And then they go, oh, crud, what do I do now?
Yeah, exactly that. I think, if you're, it's, whatever, what they're saying, we are Uber for dog sitting, like, yeah. And there's so much, like, we're Airbnb for haircuts, right? It just, when you don't necessarily have any understanding of what that market actually looks like, substitute ability, what are the economics behind that? I think the startups that I think most likely to succeed have some knowledge of the pain firsthand. If ideally, was it a pain they experienced personally, and and what would you do to fix this? Like, why is this the way that it? Why is this the way that it seems? And it's easy, I think, in retrospect, with the sort of survivor bias, to go back and look at, what succeeded, right? Like where Shopify sprung from at the beginning, right? And it's not obvious necessarily that they would have necessarily been the big success that they are right now, but you can see that there was a pain in selling, like with surfboards. I think it was the vector by which to sell surfboards. So you can see the seed of an idea and how to resolve it themselves, and then sort of pivot to a service that offers that to other companies, right? So, but that's, again, if you have firsthand experience in that pain, you have a better idea and sort of, again, empathy for solving that problem. And you don't have to be necessarily firsthand knowledge. If you are, again, empathetic to other people's pain, and then have the imagination to think of ways that you can resolve it, that's a pretty critical first step. But until you've figured out, whose pain are you trying to solve, because you can't solve all people's pain worldwide, right? Mm-hmm. So you got to figure what makes the most sense within your own capabilities and control and interest. And I think the other is, this something that you are, you better love that baby, right? Is this something that you feel you can love for the next 10 years? Because that's probably how long it's going to take before you have any kind of measurable success, right? Like however you define success as well. So like a lot of little variables at play here.
Yeah, and is it if you break the stone on the 91st hack, was it the 91st hack that you did something differently, or was it the fact that you did it 90 times before? And I think you're blending a combination of the two that's really important. Eldon, I want to thank you very much for joining me. I think there's a lot that you've given our community.
My pleasure. Thank you for the time.
Eldon, thank you for that great conversation. As you reflect on what we discussed, you might begin to notice how success isn't about overnight wins, but it's about resilience, adaptability, and staying in the game long enough to recognize and seize the right opportunity. As you think back, you might realize just how powerful these key takeaways can be. Imagine what could happen if you embraced the challenges and adapted to what comes next. What if the opportunities you've been waiting for are just around the corner, and all you need is to be ready for them? Consider how a committed and aligned team can transform the way you work and grow. You may start to see how strategic planning allows you to navigate challenges and create new possibilities. What could change if you took one more step today with focused and disciplined action? Now, let's turn these insights into action. Take a moment to imagine yourself already catching that lucky break. What's one thing that you'll do today to move toward it? Write that idea down on a napkin, capture it, and share it with us using the hashtag Paper Napkin Wisdom. If you found value in this episode, perhaps you're thinking of someone else who could use it too. Subscribe, leave a review, and share it with them now. Until next time, keep turning small ideas into big results. Make it a great day.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.